Hello, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I am C. Paul Singh, President of NISSMAT at NISSMAT. Today we are going to discuss the latest situation on the Hamas-Israel war. Hamas-Israel war has been covered by NISSMAT earlier in 4 dialogues. Attack by Hamas elements on 7th October inside Israel territory and revenge by the Israel forces. The brutalities committed on the Palestinians have been explained at length in our earlier dialogues. The attack by Hamas inside Israel on 7th October and taking away about 200 plus hostages is indeed a condemnable act. But the reaction of Israel, bombardment by forces of Israel, and barbaric revenge by Israeli forces, resulting in total destruction of hospitals, medical aids, etc., was also condemnable. Today we shall discuss the latest situation, and I have with me a retired senior army officer, Major General Deepak Mehta, who is an expert on foreign affairs. He will join me in these discussions. I request General Mehta to give us a recap on the earlier 4 dialogues so that we will proceed with this dialogue. Mr. Deepak Mehta, sir.
Deepak Mehta, Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir. I will quickly recap what we discussed in the dialogue 4. First point which came into discussion was that both Israel is under tremendous pressure internationally as well as in domestic sphere. Internationally, because a large number of demonstrations have taken place in Europe and in America in support of the Palestinians. As far as the domestic trouble was, Mr. Netanyahu, the Prime Minister, has been facing a lot of disturbance within the country by the people for the release of the hostages, which Mr. Sipal Singh, the President, mentioned, about 235 of them. During this phase, in the initial stages of the operations, Israel found the large number of Hamas people were operating in the civil clothes. So as such, about 700 of them have been picked up and taken to Israel for interrogation. During the operations, they found a very extensive layout of the tunnels which the Hamas were using. They had used the tunnels in the schools and the hospitals. And in one case, in the case of the hospital, they found it was the command center of the Hamas. Sometime last year, Mr. Hanaya Ismail of the Hamas and a member of the Islamic Jihad, they both had gone down to Egypt for mediation to stop the conflict. Nothing happened there because the Palestinians were insisting on the cessation of hostilities, which the Israelis did not agree. Then in December, there was a UN resolution which was passed by the ambassador of UAE. This resolution wanted a surge in the humanitarian support to the Palestinians in that area. They wanted a ceasefire, which was not agreed to. Even the Americans vetoed the thing because they said that it is against the ceasefire, is against this interest or the security of Israel. This is just a sum of what was discussed in the 4th dialogue. And also we discussed the aspect that the Israelis have been carrying out air attacks in Syria, where they killed a brigadier of the Iranian force, who was actually coordinating the operations of these groups which are operating under the control of Iran. They have also, the Israelis have also been carrying out operations in Lebanon and also in Iraq. As a matter of fact, Iraq also carried out certain about the operations against the Hezbollahs who had attacked the American bases in Iraq. This was the sum of what was discussed during the Dialogue 4.
So you have got a recap, but now the today, as it is, in spite of talks here and there, in spite of the fact that many resolutions were put across, and most of these resolutions were vetoed by US. In spite of this, the output on ceasefire is almost nil. Palestinians have lately proposed that the women, children, hostages should be released, and the Hamas operatives which are in prison in Israel, they should be released for as a measure of goodwill. But Israel did not agree to this proposal. It says till all the hostages are released, we are not going to agree on any ceasefire. It is a view of the most of the nations that Israel's intentions seems to be not to agree to a ceasefire and completely turn out the Hamas and the militant forces from Gaza. It is a view of most of the nation that Israel's intention ultimately may be to have an offensive at Rafah, where most of the Palestinian as well as the militants, militias have now concentrated. The United States proposed a draft resolution for the United Security Council only a few days back, supporting a temporary ceasefire in Gaza as soon as practicable. Now, the word, please try to note two words in this case. Temporary ceasefire in Gaza as soon as practicable. The word practicable is the catchword. When it could be practicable, that will again depend when the Israel agrees about it. And again, it says that temporary ceasefire. Now, here this point is, first point to note is that for the first time, the UN has used the word ceasefire. So far, the word being used was humanitarian pauses. This is for the first time the US in its resolution used the word temporary ceasefire in Gaza as soon as practicable. Now, these two words are catch. There should be ceasefire, but as soon as practicable. The draft resolution of USO also mentioned that any major ground, important, that any major ground offenses at Rafah would result in further harm to the civilian. This resolution was forwarded by US after the Algeria's resolution, which was submitted earlier to that, was vetoed out by the USA. One member of the Israel Prime Minister Council cabinet, he threatened that in case the hostages are not released by the beginning of the month of Ramadan, now it is going to be beginning of month of Ramadan itself, that if this is not released, these hostages are not released, they will attack Rafah. This is one of the members of the Israel Prime Minister War Cabinet. Although the Israel as such, the Israel government as such has not issued any such ultimatum or statement that there will be ground offenses against Rafah in case they are not released. But the situation is very dicey. Presently, more than half of the entire Palestinian population, about 2.3 million, is taking refuge or is close to Rafah. In case any such action is taken by Israel, it would be a huge loss to the population and property in that area. Meanwhile, another interesting feature has come up. Palestinian Foreign Minister, Riyad al-Malak has stated that Israel should vacate the occupied Palestinian territory. The entire occupied Palestinian territory should be vacated by the Israelis. He has made an appeal to the UN top court, that is the International Court of Justice, and more than 50 states are in favor of this. Now, this is going to the other end, that the Israel should vacate the entire Palestinian entry. You see, this is something both the side, other side, one side says there are two different ends of the entire war. So it seems it is high time that Israel pays attention to the advice of its well-wishers, the world over at large, and give a pass to the hostilities. Suffering of Palestinians, civilians mostly, has aroused the conscience of many people, conscience of many countries. For example, the anguished Prime Minister of Australia, the anguished Prime Minister of New Zealand, and Canada have already demanded an immediate ceasefire and have said that immediate ceasefire should be there and Gaza bombardment should stop. It is reported that about 30,000 Palestinians have already been killed, more or less, little 1,000 more or 1,000. Exact figure is not there. About 30,000 Palestinians have already been killed. And civilians are being killed in no number. No number is not come. This is half of the population is gathered towards Rafah, and number of civilians have been killed. Then it is a time for Israel to listen to the global community, including those who are advising it as friends. Interestingly, a few weeks back, for the first time only, the Foreign Minister of India also advised Israel to care and concern about the huge number of civilian and innocent civilians been killed. Now, how far this Holocaust, this tragedy will last or continue is yet to be known. Further on, I'll pass on to General Deepak to give his comments on the latest situation.
Sir, you captured very well. You had mentioned the aspect about the International Court of Justice. This two countries raised the point with the International Court of Justice of the Israeli action in Gaza. There are about 55 countries which took part in the deliberations of the International Court of Justice. Basically, the demand was that Israel should vacate the occupied territories of Palestine. The US did not agree to it because US said Israel has to cater for its own defense. What US had recommended at that point in time was that it should be a two-state arrangement, one state of Palestine and one state of Israel. But unfortunately, Israel did not take part in this International Court of Justice. But Israel is not in favor of this. They do not want Hamas to come into being again. Their idea is to take control. They're thinking of putting some civil organization in the control of Gaza Strip once the operations are over, but they will keep the security under them. So it is not going to be a two-state as what India is also recommending. It should be two-state affair with Palestine one state and Israel the other. It's not agreeable to Israel. Now, as far as the latest situation is concerned, there have been large number of missile fires from Lebanon into Israel. As a matter of fact, yesterday they have fired about 100 missiles into northern Israel. Israel has also been carrying out operations in Lebanon. Israel, as mentioned earlier, Israel has been carrying out operations in Syria. And both the countries have said that the Israeli operation have caused certain amount of civilian casualties. Now, Israel, by and large, has cleared the northern and central part of Gaza. Now comes Rafah. Rafah, as you had mentioned, is about 2.2 million people in Rafah. Israel now feels that this is the hub of the Hamas, along with the top leadership. They have already sorted out two leaders. One was the deputy commander, and now I got a report to say that the number 4, Saleh al-Arawi, has also been killed. So out of the 4 major leaders of Hamas, 2 have been killed. Now 2 are left. That they say that we are going to make sure that this leadership of Hamas is liquidated. They are carrying out operations much against the wishes of the European nations and all the countries into Rafah, because this is going to create major problems in terms of civilian casualties, because a large number of civilians in that area. It's going to cause a humanitarian problem. Now, these people who are in Rafah, where do they go if the ground operations are lost in Rafah? The northern portion is under control of Israel. They can only go to Sinai, which is in Egypt, but Egypt is not permitting them to come. They made a security area south to the border with Gaza. They are not permitting the Palestinians to come into the Sinai. So it's going to be a very difficult operation as far as the ground operations in Rafah is concerned. Another factor which came into being was a senior leader of Hamas, along with some Palestinian leaders, had been called, and they met, and they went to Russia. But what was the purpose of them going to Russia? That is the moot, and nothing has come out of it. But one point is that all the UN resolutions which have been passed, Russia has abstained against the resolutions. Apparently, it seems that the Russians want to get into the play because the Americans are in league with Israel. They probably want to get into league because they are very close to Iran. They're getting equipment from Iran for the war which is going on in Ukraine. So nothing has come out, but I guess that there's some linkage between the Russians and the Palestinians which is going to take. What has come out, nothing is known as yet.
Oh, the Deepak has done the 10th as to how the situation is developing, again going back to the thing. I'd only like to refer to this, that the last resolution, which was brought forth by Algeria, was most of the countries voted in favor. There were 13 countries who voted in favor of Algeria's resolution. Britain, however, abstained, and the US vetoed this. This is the third US veto, I said, since 7th October. They vetoed it, and it brought up its own resolution. Now, this veto, frequent use of veto, has caused concern. And in other countries, such use of veto may jeopardize the talks between US, Egypt, and Qatar, which have been Egypt, Israel, and Qatar, which have been going on to bring some release of hostages, demanding immediate, unconditional ceasefire without an agreement of Hamas is also Hamas releasing hostages is also not possible. So the situation has almost come to a standstill. U.S. proposal for temporary ceasefire and opposing a major ground offensive by Israel in Rafah is, of course, welcome proposal. Temporary ceasefire opposing a major ground. But U.S. has also proposed that there should be something about release of hostages. It is not understood as to how the hostages will be linked in this U.S. resolution of temporary ceasefire. Now, lifting barriers for providing humanitarian assistance also has been taken up. I understand in the recent past, some aid sent by the UN was allowed to go through the Israel territories. So therefore, the US proposal resolution to the Security Council underscores many things, but lifting barriers for protection of humanitarian assistance is most important. At least this is one thing where US wants to get credit because of its own domestic problem that people are protesting in US that so many people are being killed. What are you doing? So Biden has introduced it intelligently that in this resolution, the lifting barriers for provision of humanitarian assistance should also be included. Let us see how this works out and how it does not work out. Let us go to General Deepak, who would like to give some further international.
Sir, certain things which are happening now, as I mentioned that now the Hezbollah in Lebanon has come into play. Houthis in the Red Sea are targeting the ships which are moving in the Red Sea. So these are actually the proxies of Iran. Iran is actually controlling these people, be it Hamas, be it Hezbollah, be it Houthis. But yes, Israel has agreed to it. Certain amount of replenishment aid is coming into Gaza. The Americans, along with 5 more countries, I think including UAE, are airdropping supplies into the Gaza Strip. Besides that, there is a reported one Spanish ship is towing a barge with 200 tons of supplies from Cyprus. This is a pilot project to see if they can do the supply or replenishment from the sea. The Americans are also planning to make a temporary pier for bringing in aid from the sea. As far as Ramadan is concerned, Israelis have permitted certain percentage or certain number of people, Palestinians, to make a visit to Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is the most sacred mosque for the Palestinians. Now they talk about 31 or 30,000 casualties which have taken place in Gaza Strip. But as per Israeli report, about 13,000 Hamas operatives have been killed. But amongst the civilians who have died, there's a report to say there's a very large percentage of the women and children. Now, what would be the effect of this? I do not visualize, even if the leadership of Hamas is liquidated by Israel, which they are aiming for, I have a feeling the operations in Rafah is aimed at these 2 leaders, Sinwar and one more, who are apparently holed up in Rafah. Even if they succeed in this war, but will the operation stop? I have my doubts. Certain elements of Hamas will keep pinpricking the IDF which are deployed for the security of Gaza Strip. Secondly, the male population who have lost the kith and kin with this operation, wouldn't they be involved in taking or feeling for revenge? So I feel that even if the operations as Hamas is successful as what is being claimed by Israel, the pinpricks will continue to happen in times to come, sir.
I agree with you, but I feel that there are certain factors which may dilute this war for some time at least. The entry of Hezbollah and Houthi and other militias into this conflict, the ideological union between the Islamic countries, and the forthcoming elections in USA will probably bring down the veracity of this war to some extent in the near future. Now, at the international level, the new polls in USA, they flag a warning to Biden campaign. He is a little shaky because new polls are not going in favor of Democrats. Another thing, the Britain, also the recent poll of 1 or 2 are held for some by-elections. Then Sunak has warned that he would crack down on those who are pro-Gaza protesters. In between, Britain also, some pro-Gaza protesters came. So he threatened them that he would crack down very heavily on any pro-Gaza protesters. And outrage is also rising on deportation of hundreds and thousands of Palestinians, which are being thrown or which are being pushed to Northern Gaza. The residents of Gaza at one time were reported to be searching piles of rubble and garbage for any food for their children. Imagine. This is a photographic pictures have come. The residents of Gaza are searching piles of rubbish, refuse, and garbage for any food to be given to their children. So under these circumstances, now the conscience of the global community may not be aroused to the extent to totally ban Israel not to do anything inside. But I'm sure that it will, to great extent, ferocity will be reduced. The barbarism which is going on, that may be reduced to some extent. Now, USA military planes have dropped and delivered meals to about 3,800 meal packets. 38,000, I'm sorry. 38,000 meal packets have been dropped by USA at various places as a humanitarian aid. Yet, there are still voices against Biden that although you are doing this, but this is not much. It needs much more. You have to press much more on Israel to stop this barbarism. So there are cases where I feel there's a little ray of hope that this should be somehow stopped. Another point which is of very great importance is the internal conflict which is going on inside Israel. Now, anger is growing inside Israel also over military exemption given to Israel ultra-Orthodox. The ultra-Orthodox have been relieved rather, from compulsory recruitment. You know, there is a compulsory recruitment, for those who were earlier were released from army, they are taken back due to this conflict. But certain concessions have been given to ultra-Orthodox. And ultra-Orthodox number is about 1.3 million who can be called back for this sort of army operation. So the present PM of Israel, he also is feeling a little upset because of this growing unrest against him. Why are you excusing these people? He says they are excusing these people because the ultra-Orthodox elements, they are allies in the group which formed the cabinet of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. So internal conflict, I am trying to say, in the country also is having a little effect on this one because people are being killed. There are reactions. So many people have been killed. Their people are also being killed as well. And they say, all right, they are being killed. All right, you are asking all these people to be recruited back. You're sparing the ultra-Orthodox. So the war between Hamas and Israel has been raging for more than now 4 months. And it has resulted in the killing of tens and thousands of Palestinians. The public opinion of the world in general is unprecedentedly against such a war. Most of the countries have supported even South Africa's submission to the International Court of Justice against Israel's commission of this atrocity. However, Israel is bent upon total fragmentation. The problem is Israel is bent upon total fragmentation and total destruction of Gaza Strip. At this point of time, any serious political process to bring back the hostages from these militias, our Hamas, is also difficult. So this conflict, I don't find there is any immediate cessation of hostilities in sight. Egyptian strategic use of border with Gaza is also an example of service before self. No, the Egyptians are no doubt inclined in favor of Hamas. But when it comes to all right, they are coming to our side, they will build a wall. And then not wall, at least they are not allowing the people, Hamas, to cross over to go to Gaza. So Egypt is supporting reconciliation effort, but not with the other one, jihadis and infiltration into Egypt. So you tell me the final word, what are your view? Because this is the total international situation I have tried to give you. What is it USA, how it is giving, how this will affect, and how Egypt now in favor, yet is not good. What are your final views on this? How you think going to
Sir, there's some more input which has come. Israel is contemplating or apprehending major flare-up in the West Bank. The intelligence has reported that large amount of arms and ammunition have been smuggled from Iran into the West Bank. So you see this, it is increasing by the day. Now, West Bank, if it comes into being, Gaza Strip is already there. Hezbollah is being addressed in Lebanon. So there is increase. Now, as you had mentioned, Houthis are operating in the Red Sea. So there's a scope or of the operations being increased in a larger number. I think the whole world has to be very careful that it should not flare up into a larger area, sir.
True, absolutely true. I'll add the concluding remarks in a few words. The Biden administration, it is reported, intelligence report indicate that the Biden administration ultimately seeks a governance of Gaza by Palestinians, with Israel occupying the West Bank as a precursor to the Palestinian statehood. As a precursor, ultimately, if the Palestinian statehood has to come, so as a precursor to this statehood, they say that West Bank should remain occupied by Israel, while the governance of Gaza Strip may be by Palestinians. However, it is opposed by Prime Minister of Israel, who totally disagrees with it, who wants only hand-picked Palestinian for administration of Gaza. He doesn't want the Gaza Strip to be handed over to the Palestinian, and they will be given the Western Gaza Western Strip, Western Bank. They said no. I don't want. I want if the Israel has to come to Gaza, it's a hand-picked Israel, hand-picked Palestinian. I'm sorry, for administering Gaza. So under these circumstances, a new thing has come up that Biden ultimately is thinking that when the Palestinian statehood is ultimately created, let us have the West Bank under Israel. But Israel said, no, I'm already there and there. I'm already, I am dominating over Gaza. There's no question of this thing. But if at all, the Gaza Strip has to be handed over to Palestinians, so there will be hand-picked Palestinians which will approved by them who want to control the Gaza Strip. Now, only ray of hope to me is that the Gaza Strip comes, according to me, I mean, I'm after seeing all this, my ray of hope is that for some time, Gaza Strip may be brought under the control of a legitimate global body. Some legitimate global body may come and control the Gaza Strip, and for its effective governance to address the humanitarian needs at that stage, some international institution should step in. With these words, I thank you very much, General Mehta. Let's hope.
Thank you, sir. Pleasure being with you, sir.